The tablet landed on my desk with the kind of soft thud that changes everything. I was deep in quarterly compliance reports when this kid Ryan from legal walked in, holding that damn thing like it was radioactive. "Sir," he said, voice barely above a whisper, "you've been terminated. I'm Kenneth Harper, 58 years old, and I've been running operations at Langford Systems for 26 years. We're a $340 million telecommunications infrastructure company, not huge by Fortune 500 standards, but big enough that our infrastructure failures affect thousands of businesses across 3 states. Started here as a junior engineer right after my Army discharge, worked my way up through every department. These days, kids call me old school like it's an insult. Truth is, I take it as a compliment. I looked up from my risk assessment matrix. The numbers weren't adding up on our Q2 compliance budget, down $643,000 from Q1 with no documented approval. In the Army, we had a saying, if the math doesn't work, someone's cooking the books. Terminated? Ryan, I'm presenting to the board in 30 minutes. He didn't laugh. Just turned that tablet toward me and tapped the screen. Executive separation and buyout agreement. Kenneth R. Harper, signed, dated, time-stamped, 8:15 a.m. The wall clock showed 9:20. Where did this come from? HR routed it. Your badge is already deactivated. That's when I knew this wasn't some clerical error. This was a precision strike. And I had a pretty good idea who'd pulled the trigger. Miranda Foster, 32 years old, Stanford MBA, our CEO for the past 18 months. 8 years ago, she was a junior analyst who couldn't tell a P&L from a purchase order. I taught her everything: how to read financial statements, how to spot budget irregularities, how to think 3 moves ahead. Back then, she hung on every word like I was some kind of corporate oracle. After our previous CEO retired, the board promoted her based on her transformational vision. In 18 months, she turned our company into her personal disruption experiment, complete with consultants who'd never actually built anything. I studied the signature on that tablet. It looked like mine. Hell, it even felt like mine, which meant someone had put serious work into making it that way. Digital forensics wasn't my specialty, but 26 years in operations teaches you to spot when something's been manufactured. "Ryan," I said, standing up and grabbing my portfolio. "Walk with me." "Walk where?" "To the boardroom." His face went white. "Mr. Harper, I don't think you're allowed." "Son, if you think a PDF and a deactivated badge are going to stop me from walking into that room, then you haven't been paying attention for the past 26 years. See, here's what these MBA types never understand. They think corporate warfare is about PowerPoints and buzzwords. But I learned strategy in places where mistakes got people killed. You don't react, you prepare. You don't fight fair, you fight smart." 4 weeks earlier, I'd been sitting in my office working through budget variance reports when I noticed the first anomaly. Our compliance department had been allocated $2.1 million for Q2, standard amount about 0.6% of our annual revenue. Critical stuff too. SEC filings, audit preparations, risk assessments, the kind of boring but essential work that keeps companies out of federal prison. But the actual spending showed only $1.457 million, missing $643,000 with no board approval, no documentation, just vanished like morning fog. I didn't panic, didn't fire off angry emails to accounting. Instead, I did what any good engineer does when something doesn't add up. I started collecting data. I pulled the GL codes for that missing money, tracked it through 3 different cost centers before finding it buried in something called Digital Transformation Initiative, a department that didn't exist 6 months ago, with a budget bigger than some of our core engineering teams. The woman running it? Brianna Walsh, Miranda's 26-year-old niece whose biggest achievement was a Northwestern marketing degree and 50,000 Instagram followers. That night, I went home and opened a beer, just one, never more when I'm thinking, and started making lists. Assets, liabilities, allies still in the building. On the last page, I wrote one name in all caps: Titan Industries, LLC. Most people forget about corporate structures they're not actively using. I've been maintaining Titan for 15 years, ever since the 2008 crash when I used it to buy distressed commercial properties. Kept it alive, paid the fees, maintained the registered agent. In military terms, I kept my weapons clean even when I wasn't expecting to fight. But Titan wasn't just my investment vehicle. Back in 2003, When Langford was desperate for strategic partnerships, old Bill Langford had issued what he called founders' shares to early supporters. 5 Class C shares to Titan Industries, each carrying special voting provisions. Most corporate shares are straightforward 1 share, 1 vote. But Class C shares were different. They carried 20-to-1 voting power on matters of executive governance. Our board structure allocates 180 total votes, 7 board members with 20 votes each, plus 40 institutional shareholder votes. Bill designed them as protection against corporate coups. Do the math. 5 shares times 20-to-1 voting power equals 100 votes. That's 55.6% control of any executive decision. The beautiful part? Those shares only activated under specific conditions, involuntary termination of strategic personnel without formal board approval. Bill Langford had built a fail-safe into his own company's DNA, protection against exactly what Miranda was trying to do. I finished my beer and started planning. Let me back up and tell you about Bill Langford, because understanding him is key to understanding how I knew exactly what to do. Bill founded this company in 1987 with $50,000 borrowed against his house and a vision to build telecommunications infrastructure that actually worked. Back then, most telecom was either overpriced garbage from big corporations or cheap junk that failed when you needed it most. Bill wanted to build something in between reliable, affordable, and built to last. I met him in 1997 when I was interviewing for the engineering position. Fresh out of the Army, 32 years old, looking for a place where my logistics and systems experience mattered. Most companies wanted kids straight out of college they could mold. Bill wanted someone who understood that infrastructure failures got people killed. "Harper," he said during my interview, "in the Army, what happened when your communication systems failed?" "People died, sir." "Exactly. Here, when our systems fail, businesses die. Same principle, different battlefield. You interested in keeping things alive?" I was. Bill taught me everything about corporate structure, not from business school textbooks, but from 40 years of building something real. He showed me how to read financial statements like military intelligence reports, how to spot weaknesses before they became disasters, how to plan for scenarios that MBA types never considered. Most importantly, he taught me about corporate defense systems. "Ken," he said one afternoon in 2003, "someday some hotshot with an MBA is going to try to take this company apart. They'll call it optimization or efficiency or some other consultant buzzword. When that happens, I want you to have the tools to stop them." That's when he explained the Class C shares. "These aren't about money," Bill said, showing me the incorporation documents. "They're about control. 5 shares, 20-to-1 voting power, but only on executive governance matters. They sleep until someone tries to fire strategic personnel without proper board oversight." "Why 20-to-1?" I asked. "Because mathematics," Bill replied with that dry engineer's smile. 5 times 20 equals 100 votes. Our board allocates 180 total governance votes. 7 members get 20 each, plus 40 institutional votes. That means these shares control 55.6% of executive decisions, but only when activated by improper termination procedures. Who controls them? Your investment company, Titan Industries. I trust you to use them only when the company's survival is at stake. Bill died 8 years ago. Heart attack at his desk, working late on quarterly projections like always. The memorial service filled our biggest conference room, but the real tribute was keeping his company alive. Miranda Foster never met Bill. She'd been CEO for 18 months, promoted after our previous CEO retired. Never learned that sustainable growth comes from understanding your foundation, not disrupting it every quarter. In 18 months, she'd turned a machine that worked perfectly into her personal optimization experiment. Here's how I knew she was coming for me. 3 weeks before the termination ambush, I was reviewing departmental org charts when I noticed my position had been quietly removed from the Q3 planning documents. Not reassigned, not restructured, just gone. Director of Strategic Operations had been absorbed into digital transformation, now run by Brianna Walsh. That same week, I got a call from our insurance broker. "Ken, we need to discuss your cybersecurity certifications. Corporate liability wants updated documentation for all executives with system access." Standard request, except I wasn't on the list. Miranda's assistant had removed me from executive cybersecurity protocols without telling anyone. In practical terms, that meant I was being systematically disconnected from critical infrastructure access. They were cutting my communication lines before the attack. I started documenting everything, every budget anomaly, every questionable expense, every regulation Miranda's team had bent or broken while playing corporate transformation. The $643,000 moved from compliance was just the beginning. I found $52,000 charged to team-building retreat in Napa Valley. Receipts showed spa treatments, wine tastings, and premium hotel suites for Miranda's entire leadership circle. Zero actual team-building activities. Then there was Zenith Digital $125,000 in consulting fees over 6 months to a company incorporated by Sarah Mitchell, Brianna's Northwestern roommate. I pulled their deliverables, 47 PowerPoint slides about digital synergy and disruption matrices, graduate-level nonsense that could have been written by AI. But the real smoking gun was the investor presentation. Miranda had been pitching Meridian Capital for $15 million in bridge funding money we needed for our 5G infrastructure expansion. In her materials, she listed Brianna Walsh as Director of Digital Strategy, a position that was never approved by the board. Materially misrepresenting internal leadership during a capital raise is securities fraud, plain and simple. 3 felonies and counting. That night, I called Ellis Dorman, my tax attorney since the early 2000s. Ken, thought you'd retired to fish and play golf. Not yet. I need Titan Industries reactivated, full corporate standing, still got all the paperwork. What's the situation? Class C shares, need to invoke the proxy reversion clause. Long pause. Ellis had helped draft those original agreements. Someone trying to stage a coup? Already staged. They just don't know I'm still holding the nuclear codes. Ellis laughed. Give me 48 hours. Titan will be fully operational with updated proxy authority and voting certification. I spent those 48 hours preparing my evidence package. Financial forensics, regulatory violations, securities law breaches, everything documented, watermarked, and backed up to off-site servers. By the time Miranda's termination paperwork hit my desk, Titan Industries held controlling interest in Langford Systems' executive governance. The moment she fired me without board approval, those Class C shares activated automatically. Bill Langford's failsafe had been sleeping for 20 years, waiting for exactly this moment. Miranda thought she was playing chess. I was about to show her she'd been playing checkers on a minefield. The elevator was broken, so we took the stairs. 5 floors, but I didn't break a sweat. Ryan was panting by floor 3. "Mr. Harper," he wheezed, "if that signature really is yours." I stopped, looked back at him. "Son, I guess we're about to find out what happens when you try to outmaneuver someone who spent 12 years in the Army before you were born." Then I pushed open the boardroom door. The room went dead silent. 7 board members, 1 glass table, and a PowerPoint still showing my title on the first slide. Director of Strategic Operations Kenneth Harper. My chair at the end was empty. Until it wasn't. Miranda Foster froze mid-sip on her monogrammed coffee mug. The woman who used to ask me if CapEx was a Marvel character now controlled our company. 8 years ago, she couldn't balance a departmental budget without calling me twice for help. "Ken," she said, forcing that MBA smile, "I think there's been some confusion." "Apparently so," I replied, setting my portfolio on the table. "You weren't supposed to see me here." Ryan cleared his throat behind me, still clutching that tablet like a life preserver. "Excuse me, Kenneth Harper has been removed from the active roster as of 8:15 this morning." He turned the tablet toward the group. "Per Section 4B of the buyout agreement, his badge has been deactivated. This digital signature is verified." I stepped forward, studying the tablet like I was reading a grocery list. My own name stared back in perfect cursive. The timestamp matched. It looked real because someone had worked damn hard to make it that way. "Miranda," I said, "I'd like to begin my presentation." She blinked. "Ken, you're not on the roster anymore. The document shows you accepted the severance package. Then I suppose I'm doing this pro bono." I opened my portfolio and pulled out the printed agenda, quarterly forecast deviations presented by Kenneth Harper. Warren Caldwell, our senior board member, leaned forward. Warren had been here since the Clinton administration. He knew where all the bodies were buried. "What's this about, Ken?" I clicked my remote. The projector flickered to life. Slide 1. Unauthorized financial allocations, Q2 to present. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Bullet points loaded one by one. $643,000 reallocated from compliance to digital transformation without board approval. $52,000 charged to company card for executive retreats in Napa Valley. $125,000 in consulting fees to Zenith Digital, a shell company. Deferred severance payouts hidden in facilities maintenance codes. Miranda's coffee mug rattled against the table as she set it down. Ken, this is inappropriate. You don't have standing to... Then I assume you've read the full buyout agreement. I cut her off. That shut her up fast. Warren spoke next. Context, please. Ryan, scroll to section 6.3 on that tablet. Poor Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear into the wall. He fumbled with the device, nearly dropping it. Section 6.3, he read, voice cracking. Reversion of strategic authority and proxy voting rights. Upon execution of involuntary executive termination without board approval, all strategic authority shall revert to the original holder of Class C equity units. The youngest board member, some hotshot from Goldman, looked up. Who holds the Class C units? Originally issued to Titan Industries LLC in 2003, I said. Reactivated 3 weeks ago with full proxy authority. Another silence, but this one had weight to it. And you're affiliated with that entity? Warren asked. I smiled without warmth. I am Titan Industries LLC. You could have heard a pin drop in a thunderstorm. Miranda finally found her voice. This is fraud, legal gymnastics. Fraud requires deceit, I replied. The documents are publicly filed. Share transfer is logged with Delaware Secretary of State. ION is traceable. You can verify every page. I clicked to the next slide. But let's talk about actual fraud. The screen showed my forensic analysis. Every unauthorized transaction, every backdated approval, every regulation Miranda's team had violated while playing CEO. $52,000 for team building that was actually family vacations. Brianna Walsh listed as Director of Digital Strategy in investor memos, despite no formal board appointment. That memo supported our pitch to Meridian Capital for $15 million in bridge funding money we needed for our 5G infrastructure expansion. Materially misrepresenting internal leadership during a capital raise is securities fraud, plain and simple. Warren was taking notes now. The Goldman guy was typing furiously on his phone. Class C shares carry 20-to-1 voting power on executive governance matters, I continued. 5 shares equals 100 votes. Our board structure allocates 180 total votes, 7 board members with 20 votes each, plus 40 institutional shareholder votes. My 100 votes represent controlling interest. I pulled out a flash drive and set it next to my portfolio. Complete documentation, chronological, watermarked, with backup copies uploaded to off-site counsel. Miranda stood up like the chair was on fire. This is absurd. You don't have authority. You gave it to me, I said, my voice steady as concrete. The moment you signed that buyout without reading Section 6.3, the moment you decided disruption meant gutting oversight, the moment you forgot who taught you how to read a balance sheet. I clicked to the final slide. At the top was a letter from our corporate liability insurer, subject line highlighted in yellow, coverage denial Section 14D breach of due diligence. Our insurance company responded within an hour of my inquiry, I said. Coverage voided due to failure to seek legal counsel prior to contractual authorization of executive termination. Miranda sank back into her chair like someone had cut her strings. Warren cleared his throat. I move to call a formal vote on the removal of CEO Miranda Foster, pending full investigation into unauthorized executive actions and procedural violations. Seconded, said the Goldman guy without looking up from his notes. All in favor? Hands went up around the table. Firm, deliberate, like they were swearing in for war. All opposed? Nothing. Not even Brianna, who sat near the back looking like she'd been hit by a truck. Motion carries. The room exploded. Phones dialing, voices rising, assistants summoned. Miranda didn't argue, just sat there, stripped of title, authority, and the illusion that an MBA was a substitute for experience. Her carefully constructed corporate persona had cracked like cheap paint under pressure. I tapped my tablet one final time. The screen went black. I will not be accepting the role of CEO, I announced. That got their attention. Warren blinked. Excuse me? I never wanted the throne, I said. I wanted the termites out of the walls. Another board member asked, Then who do you propose? Amanda Bright from finance. She's been quietly untangling Miranda's budget mess for months, flagged every inconsistency I showed you today, never asked for credit, never looked the other way when the numbers didn't add up. Warren nodded slowly. I'll schedule a closed session for appointment review. I reached into my portfolio and pulled out a sealed envelope. Thick ivory paper, my name written in fountain pen across the front. My actual resignation, I said, handing it to Warren. Dated, signed, effective tomorrow. This time, my own signature. Warren took it with both hands like it was a lit match. I didn't wait for applause or protest. Just nodded once, turned, and walked toward the door. Behind me, the room exploded. Phones dialing, voices rising, assistants summoned. Brianna asked something about severance packages and got stares sharp enough to draw blood. I didn't turn back. The elevator was working now. I pressed the button and waited, thinking about what Bill Langford would say about today's events. He'd probably laugh that dry engineer's laugh and say something like, "Ken, sometimes the best way to fix a machine is to let it break down completely first." The doors opened. I stepped in and pressed the lobby button. As the floors counted down, I thought about the last 26 years, the projects we'd built, the problems we'd solved, the people I'd trained who went on to build their own careers. Miranda was just one mistake in a quarter-century of getting things right, but she was a mistake worth fixing. My phone buzzed. Text from Amanda Bright. Board voted unanimously. I'm interim CEO. First order of business. Forensic audit of all transactions since January. Second order, you're hired as senior strategic advisor if you want it. I smiled and typed back. Thanks, but I'm thinking about buying a boat. Let me know if you need any help navigating rough waters. The elevator doors opened on the lobby floor. I walked through those glass doors one last time, knowing I'd left the company in better hands than I'd found it. Here's what these MBA types never understand. It's not about the title or the corner office or the monogrammed coffee mugs. It's about building something that lasts, something that works, something that matters. I got in my truck, rolled down the windows, and started the drive home. The radio was playing some classic rock station, and for the first time in months, I actually listened to the music instead of planning my next move. That evening, I opened a beer, a good one this time, not the cheap stuff I drank while plotting corporate warfare and sat on my back porch. 26 years of corporate battles, and this one felt like the most important. Not because I won, because I'd protected something worth protecting. My phone rang. Ellis Dorman, my attorney. Ken, just got word from the Delaware Secretary of State. Titan Industries Proxy Authority has been formally transferred back to dormant status. Clean separation. Good. Keep the entity active, though. You never know when you might need good corporate hygiene. Ellis laughed. Planning another coup? Planning retirement. But like Bill always said, keep your weapons clean. The next morning, I drove back to the office one final time. Not to clean out my desk, I'd done that weeks ago when I saw this coming, just to walk the halls and remember what we'd built. The engineering department was buzzing with activity, junior engineers working on infrastructure projects that would keep communications running for businesses across 3 states. These kids understood that reliability mattered more than buzzwords. I stopped by Amanda's office. She was already behind the CEO desk, laptop open, calculator in hand, working through budget reconciliations. How's it feel? I asked. She looked up, smiled. Terrifying. But the math is starting to make sense again. That's how you know you're doing it right, when the numbers tell a story instead of hiding one. Ken, I meant what I said about the advisory position. This company needs institutional knowledge. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Part-time consultant, monthly retainer. I show up when you need help reading corporate tea leaves. Deal. We shook hands. Her grip was firm, confident. She'd be fine. I walked back through the lobby one more time, past the reception desk where I'd signed in thousands of mornings, past the conference rooms where I'd sat through countless meetings, past the offices where I'd trained dozens of employees who went on to bigger things. In the parking lot, I ran into Warren Caldwell getting out of his Mercedes. Ken, heard you might stick around in some capacity. Part-time. Amanda's got good instincts, but this place has a lot of history she'll need to navigate. Warren nodded. What you did yesterday that took preparation and patience. Sometimes you have to wait for people to make their own mistakes. Miranda's finished, you know. SEC inquiry starts Monday. Board's voting her complete separation at tomorrow's emergency session. I wasn't surprised. Securities fraud has a way of ending careers permanently. What about Brianna? Back to whatever 26-year-olds with marketing degrees do. Probably starting a lifestyle blog. We stood there for a moment, two old hands who'd seen too many corporate wars. Ken, can I ask you something? Why didn't you want the CEO job? With those Class C shares, you could have run this place however you wanted. I thought about Bill Langford, about the difference between power and responsibility, about the kind of legacy worth leaving behind. Warren, I spent 26 years learning how to keep this company running, but running it was never the point. The point was making sure it kept running after I was gone. I got in my truck and drove home, past strip malls and office parks, past the infrastructure we'd built to keep businesses connected and communities functioning. At the next red light, I pulled out my phone and called my son Michael, who was finishing his MBA at Wharton. Dad? Everything okay? Everything's fine. Just wanted to tell you something. When you graduate and start looking for that first real job, find a company that builds things, not a company that disrupts things or optimizes things. Find people who actually build something useful and figure out how to make it better. Okay, Dad. Any particular reason for the career advice? Just learned the difference between winning a war and winning a battle. Thought you should know. After we hung up, I sat in my driveway for a few minutes, engine off, thinking about the next chapter. Maybe that boat wasn't such a bad idea, or maybe I'd start consulting for small engineering firms, help them avoid the mistakes that bigger companies always seem to make. Either way, I was done fighting other people's wars. Time to build something new. They tried to erase me. Instead, I rewrote the ending. Game over.